Phillip Gwynne here. I'm going to be reading from my book, The Break. We're at chapter 45, and the two characters we'll meet are Taj, who's a 15-year-old Aussie surfer living in Bali, and Kartika, who's also 15, also living in Bali. Her parents are Australian, but she's been adopted as she's of unknown Indonesian origins. Taj lay on the bed and waited. He was naked except for a hotel towel draped over his midriff. The rain poncho he'd found under the bike seat and pulled on to walk past reception sat piled on the top of his blood-soaked shirt, shorts and boxers in the corner of the room. From outside came the Muslim call to prayer. Pray for me. Please pray for me, because now he felt wide open and death could easily find a way into him. He couldn't help himself. He moved the edge of the towel aside to reveal the gash across his abdomen. It's at least 10 centimetres, Kartika had said. You need to go to the hospital. It was also deep. Taj could see the frilly layers of fat. It wasn't bleeding now, not like it had been before, and it didn't hurt that much, only a slow, deep throb. Taj shivers as he thought of all the blood he'd lost, a crimson trail marking his erratic route through the city streets. What if I die right here, in this hotel, in this town? You need to stay calm. Closing his eyes, he imagined the traffic noise as surf noise. He was out back, bobbing on his board, the sun warm on his head. Finally, the door opened. You okay? Said Kartika, shopping bags in each hand. Sort of, said Taj. I hope these fit, she said, pulling clothes from one bag. They'll do, says Taj, but the other stuff? I think I got everything, she said, shaking the contents of the other bag onto the bed. Except for the anaesthetic. Shit, said Taj. I tried 5 different places, but they all said I could only get it at the hospital. Taj looked at Kartika and saw fear in her face. I'm so sorry you got involved in this, he said, but I just can't risk going to the hospital. But Taj, you could die. Taj shrugged. If I give myself up, they'll find my dad, and he will definitely die. Taj kept his eyes on Kartika until finally she answered. No anaesthetic it is then. Even though he'd seen Dairy stitch up countless surfers, Taj felt the need to look at the YouTube video again. As he did, Kartika watched over his shoulder. Looks pretty straightforward, he said as he swabbed the wound with a cloth dipped in alcohol, the stinging pain a contrast to the slow throb of the cut. Then he took the sterilised packet with the needle and thread and propped himself up on the bed. First stitch, he said, and he brought the point of the needle to the edge of the wound. Here we go, but his hand refused to move any further. Here we go, he repeated. This time he forced his hand to move, to jab down. The needle pierced the skin and Taj stifled a scream, but the needle didn't go any further than that. Stop, said Kartika. But I have to do it, said Taj, a hint of panic in his voice. I have to. Oh, the angle's all wrong, said Kartika. There's no way you can do it yourself. Taj knew that Kartika was right, but he couldn't ask her to do it. The only other option he had was to get back to Jerry's place, where Kimbo would sort him out. Oh, give me the needle, said Kartika. You don't, started Taj, but Kartika cut him off. Just give me the needle. Taj handed it over. I think you should lie back on the bed so you don't see what's happening. I think so too, said Taj nervously. You want to watch the YouTube video again? No, I watched it pretty closely, said Kartika, and a thought occurred to him that she'd always known he wouldn't be able to stitch his own wound. He lay back on the bed, but the pillow was too high, so he tossed it aside. Now his head was on the sheet, and his arms were by his sides. Kartika kneeled by the bed. She swabbed the wound with alcohol again. You ready, she said, and Taj was surprised at how calm she sounded. Sure, said Taj, attempting a similar note, but failing. He knew it was going to hurt like nothing had ever hurt before, but there was something else as well. Lying there, naked, he felt so open, so vulnerable. Shit a brick, said Kartika. Stitches away. Even Taj was surprised by how loudly he screamed. He screamed when the needle punctured the skin, and he kept screaming as a thread slid through his flesh. Gathering up a handful of the sheet, Taj bit hard on it. This time, when the needle punctured the skin, the scream went no further. Taj could feel the stitch tighten, that part of the wound close, Then a snip as Kartika cut the thread. That's one down, she said. I reckon there's at least 20 to go. Now that Taj knew what was coming, he tensed his body in anticipation. Maybe try to relax, Kartika said. Not that easy, snapped Taj. I could put some relaxing music on my phone, said Kartika. Good idea, said Taj. Rage against the machine. Are you sure? Yep, I'm sure, said Taj, putting in the earbuds Kartika handed him. And he was right. The singer snarling against the injustices of the world was perfect for the anger he was feeling. Why did he have to go through this torture? Finally, Kartika squeezed his hand and Taj took out the earbuds. It's done, she said. Taj propped himself up and looked down at his wound. The stitches weren't perfect, not like Dairy's were perfect, but they were regularly spaced and the wound was completely closed. Death didn't have such an easy way in now. And a feeling of exhilaration swept over Taj. He'd got through it. Yes, he shouted, wrapping his arms around Kartika. Taj could smell her, feel the strength in her body, and this sudden closeness with a girl he hardly knew caused him to pull back. Oh, you did an excellent job, he said. Oh, an excellent job indeed, said Kartika, laughing at this unexpected formality. Oh, sorry, said Taj, realising he'd never really looked at Kartika before, not from this close. Never noticed how perfectly her short hair framed her features, her dark almond eyes. You're really beautiful, he thought. Really, really beautiful. It's okay, said Kartika, returning his gaze. That wasn't fun for you. There were no other words, but their eyes remained locked. We're actually going to kiss. And immediately you could see reasons why they shouldn't. Anger was a pretty major one, but it also seemed appropriate, almost inevitable, given the ordeal they'd both been through, that they should. Their faces moved closer and closer until there was an urgent knock on the door.